Republicans have a lot to be optimistic heading into the off-year elections in New Jersey and Virginia and the midterms. Seth Keshel explains in under 60 seconds.
Serious traction toward the Republican Party 7 months after the 2024 election. You've got a greater than 1 million shift in the number of voter registrations that have gone from net Democrat towards net Republican, and that is consistent across all 29 states that have updated data since November, including California, Colorado, and all throughout the Blue Wall. I think that the recent street riots over immigration and illegal immigration enforcement have been a massive boon for the Republican Party, and if they can take advantage of it, they've got a chance to be able to expand a majority in next fall's election.
All right, guys, it is Tuesday, and already we're in for a whirlwind. The president yesterday at the G7 summit in Canada, leaving early because of what's going on in the Middle East. Here he is explaining his departure.
President, any statement on why you're leaving the G7 early for Washington?
Well, I have to be back. Very important. I want to just thank our great host. He did a fantastic job. Thank you in Canada. But you probably see what I see, and I have to be back as soon as I can and have dinner with these wonderful leaders, and then I get on the plane. I have to be back early.
Have you heard the National Security Council?
I loved it. I tell you, I loved it. And I think we got a lot done. Really a lot done. In fact, UK, we signed a big trade deal today, and we're working on others, but we had just a really great relationship with everybody, and it's really nice. I wish I could stay for tomorrow, but they understand.
Is there a reason,
big,
Mr. President,
this is big stuff.
All right, so he flies back to Washington. I think he got in at like 5 in the morning. He was out just saying stuff on Truth Social. I mean, the guy is a workhorse. I don't know how, honest to God, I don't want to sound like cringe on Pierre when I said he runs circles around people, but he runs circles around people. Like, I go to bed at like 9:30 every night. I can't stay. I mean, and he is up moving. He talked to the press on the way home on the plane last night, explaining what the motives were. But this is a big deal. This truly is probably one of the most consequential things that he's going to do. And people are on both sides of this. You got Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene on one side, Laura Loomer, and a bunch of other people on the other. It's a tough question. Iran is making a nuclear weapon. Whether they have it completely conceptualized or not, I'm not sure. But the bottom line is they chant death to America. And Israel is on the offensive, I think, with the opportunity to wipe it out. The president's been very clear. He told them to sign this deal, Iran. Now, I think a lot of this is still a negotiating tactic. President Trump being very clear. I told you what to do. I've got the ability to annihilate you. He's telling people to get out of Iran. Let me read you this thing. Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. What a shame and a waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. He's making it very clear. I still am a believer that this is a threat. This is part of Trump being a negotiator, which is, I can do this, get back to the table. And making sure that Iran understands it will have to give up all of its nuclear capabilities. They cannot have a nuke. Like, we all should agree on that. These guys chant death to America. Why would you ever want them to have a nuke, regardless of what they can do regionally? So I think if Trump can snuff this thing out, all the better. But everyone's obviously infighting. He basically has gone after Tucker Carlson online, saying that, he's kooky. But at the end of the day, I think we all want the same thing. How do we protect American interests without sending a ton of boots on the ground? That's what America First is to me. How can we do this? And Trump negotiates and does things in a way that no one else can or ever has. He makes it very clear to Iran what's at stake. Remember, Benjamin Netanyahu was on Fox News with Brett Baier this weekend.
I want to talk about the nuclear threat, and I want to talk about President Trump. You just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. They want to kill him. Look, he's enemy number one. He's a decisive leader. He never took the path that others took to try to bargain with him in a way that is weak, giving them basically a pathway to enrich uranium, which means a pathway to the bomb, padding it with billions and billions of dollars. He took up this fake agreement and basically tore it up. He killed Qasem Soleimani. He made it very clear, including now, you cannot have a nuclear weapon, which means you cannot enrich. He's been very forceful. So for them, he's He's enemy number one.
Yeah.
Look, they also tried to kill me, but I'm his junior partner.
When did
they
you
understand that President Trump is a great threat to Iran's plans to weaponize nuclear weapons and use them.
When did you tell President Trump you were going to launch these strikes?
Look, I've been in constant contact with President Trump. We've known each other for many years. And obviously, we informed our American friends and President Trump, our great friend, ahead of time. We did. He knew about it, of course.
I mean, there were reports that President Trump kind of helped you achieve your strategic surprise by publicly urging you not to attack when he already knew you had decided to do it. So you were closely coordinating with the U.S. throughout this process.
Look, we're fully coordinated, but understand that America, under President Trump, will make the decisions that are best for America. And that's the way it is. He understands that I, as the Prime Minister of Israel, the one and only Jewish state, must make the decisions that are important for the survival of my country, and he will do what is best for America. That is a relationship of mutual respect and mutual confidence.
So if you're a big Trump fan, understand this is who we're negotiating with. They literally tried to kill the guy. Tucker was on with Steve Bannon yesterday.
Why was Tulsi Gabbard not invited to the Camp David meeting all day?
You know why.
Why Tulsi Gabbard still to the American public has said the last public statement is that the program was not back up and running. And now we have from Bibi by himself on Fox by Brett Baier that the thing was 12 to 13 months away. It wasn't this weekend.
I know.
And this is by his own thing. And we also know that it was a decapitation, as we said on Friday. It wasn't just about the nuclear program. It's a decapitation of total leadership. So this is a total regime change, which, by the way, you may have a plan for regime change, is fine, but you got to bring the American people along. Let me go back.
By the way, I said that publicly last week. This is the point of this is regime change. I know everyone involved. I know I'm telling the truth. I have no weird motive here at all. I don't hate Israel. I'm not.
Plus, you know the players, and you went to, and you know the Iraq situation.
This isn't a regime change effort, and why not just say that? But you're a Holocaust denier for saying that. Well, stop. Let's have a rational conversation about what our aims are here, and maybe you can convince me that we need to support a regime change war in Iran. Tell me how that plays out in a country of 90 million people. Have you thought it through? Do you even care? And the answer is no. We have a economic and political and demographic crisis in Europe because of U.S.-backed, Israel-backed
Syria
wars in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That's what's destroyed Europe, where my ancestors came from. And I spend a lot of time there, and I love European culture, which is Christian culture. And it's destroyed that. And shut up, you're not allowed to care. Who's making the rules here?
I understand his position, but at the end of the day, I also don't think that Iran should have a nuke. We should figure out a way to make this all happen. But there's going to have to be a lot of explaining to do, because Tulsi Gabbard, during her nomination, made it very clear that Iran didn't have a weapon. So let's take a listen to what she said back then in March.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
Now, look, I know a lot of people have Iraq in the back of their mind thinking, yeah, we were sold on WMD once before, and that didn't happen. So if we go after these guys, they don't have a nuke. But I do think, regardless of whether they have it or not, they made it very clear what they want to do and what they will do. So I trust President Trump to make the right decision to keep America safe, and I hope he does that. I will tell you that the media is trying to blow this up, so be careful what you read and how you read it. I was actually really disgusted, by the way, of how Political Playbook, it's run by this Brit who just admits that he came over here, literally demeaning the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kaine, calling him highly inexperienced. I just want to tell you what this guy has done. Part of Chairman Dan Kaine's experience. He was the assistant director for military affairs to the CIA. He has over 2,800 flight hours in the cockpit, 2 tours in Iraq, and he's assistant commanding general of Joint Special Operations Command. That sounds pretty experienced to me. But these, I don't even want to say it. There are very bad people working at Politico. And the idea of demeaning the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because they don't like him or whatever it is, you know what, dude, if you don't want to be here, go home. Go back to Britain. But don't come here and demean our folks. By the way, tomorrow, I'm just going to say this right now, a very, very special episode on a very cool topic. You're not going to want to miss this. That's all I can tell you. Great panel on Thursday. Alex Sawyer, Rob Bluey, Jessica Anderson from the Sentinel Action Fund is going to be here. And then Friday, Robert O'Brien, former national security advisor to Trump, to break everything down. Coming your way. But before I get to Seth Keshel, who is going to give us the latest on voter registration and his take on Iran, I got to tell you, there's a great guy that you guys have heard me talk about before. His name is Leo Grillo. He founded Delta Rescue. It all started with one Doberman that he found on the side of the road that he took care of. And then that began what is now deltarescue.org. If you go to deltarescue.org, you'll see these videos. And just do me a favor. Maybe after the show, click on one of them and just see what I'm talking about. This is so cool what he has done. What he has built. It's dogs, horses, cats, animals of all shapes and sizes that have been abused, neglected, malnutrition. It doesn't matter. He takes it in everything. And it's a world's largest no-kill sanctuary. They're not looking to replace or home these animals. He's taking care of them all for life. But the thing about what Leo Grillo has built at Delta Rescue is that it's not built on a bunch of government contracts and things like that. It's all through donations of people like me and you. So do what I did. I literally made a personal contribution to Leo Grillo because of the amazing work that he does at Delta Rescue. Go to deltarescue.org. Take a look at what they're doing. Please consider a contribution. There's an estate planning kit. If you can help make Delta Rescue an enduring mission, maybe you have an old 401k, a stock, whatever it is, please consider doing that. deltarescue.org. Continue the great work that Leo Grillo has started. All right, guys, if you are the person that runs a company, leads a company, in charge of finances, you got to get one of these. This is a ramp card. Okay, it looks just like a Visa card. In fact, on the other side, it says Visa. This one's blank because I'm not that dumb that I'm going to give you my actual ramp card with a real number. But this is an unbelievable spend management system. So if you are running a company, you know that you spend probably a good chunk of your day running around chasing employees on how much they spend, where they can spend it, getting receipts. I mean, like 80% of your day is done doing this thing. Ramp gives you real-time visibility and control. It lets you set limits and places of what your employees can do, whether you got 5 or 5,000. This is a total game changer. They've got this white glove onboarding to help you get set up as well. Over 25,000 businesses trust Ramp, including Shopify and Boys and Girls Club of America. They were just named #1 in spend management by G2. And now for a limited time, listeners of the show can get $250 in their pocket just by signing up for Ramp. Just go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer to get $250 in your office and a ton of time back in your day by signing up and creating a better spend management system. Cards issued by Sutton Bank, members FDIC, terms and conditions apply. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in the guru of voter registration, somebody that you've heard Newt Gingrich praise, who is briefing people at the highest levels as far as the trends that are going on right now as we head into the midterms. Our buddy, friend of the show, Seth Keshel. Seth, always great to see you. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Sean, it's been great. We knocked it out of the park in 2024, and it's important that we get accurate information in the hands of our people.
Well, that's what we're about to do. Look, I want to get to this, all of your latest analysis. A lot going on in the election world. Before I do that, though, you were an intelligence officer in the military. This issue looming large right now with Iran. I dare say that there are voices on both sides of the America First MAGA movement. Some people saying we should completely stay out. Some people saying that it makes sense to protect our interest and preventing Iran from moving further with a nuclear weapon that could be used against us. Based on your analysis and feeling, I mean, you kind of combine the two. You've got the intel background from your service in the Army, and obviously your finger on the pulse of the MAGA movement. Where do you come down on this issue?
It's a really dicey issue. I think that the post 9/11 veteran community, which of course you're part of that, is going to have different views than a lot of people who see this from 100 yards out or more. It's going to be something that's essential for President Trump to maintain his positions, to not get involved directly, not putting troops on the ground. I think that you're going to probably have logistical support. I think you have a very complex global picture with a lot of the countries of the world, especially out east, the eastern part of the world, that are backing Iran. You have the Western countries backing Israel. And I think that you're going to see Israel strike back here in the next 72 hours. And depending on how that goes, you know, if U.S. troops are being pressured into a situation in Iran to go door-to-door military urban terrain, it's going to be a big mess. Remember 2004 in Iraq, it's going to be way worse in Iran if troops are going door-to-door. I think it's very important for us to exercise as much authority to stay out of direct conflict in this as it potentially accelerates into the top story of 2025.
All right, one more follow-up on this. If President Trump said, I'm going to use the B-2s to go over, drop this bunker busting bomb, not to be confused with the big, beautiful bill, but equally a BBB, and said, because we want to get rid of their nuclear capability, and then we're going to let Israel and Mossad sort of do the regime change / follow on force. Are you okay with that? Should
No,
America first be?
I don't think President Trump is going to go for that. Although I do think that the next strategy for going after Iran, if you're in Israel's position, is probably going to be going after nuclear capabilities. They've got mountain facilities that are part of their enrichment plans. I think that that's where they lack the military capabilities, and therefore the pressure will be on us. But it's very important, I think, to stay neutral militarily, because if you go start pressing more engagement in foreign conflicts, it's going to really upset what we're going to talk about today. And the potential to get the domestic agenda done.
Okay. So I just want to bottom line this for you. So if Netanyahu calls Trump and says, we're on the offensive, we can wipe out the nuclear capability of Iran, we need some assistance, though, militarily, what is the response that you would give him?
I think that we have to stay neutral and stay out of this as much as possible.
So are you okay then with Iran having a nuclear weapon potentially?
I don't think that it's good for anybody in the world for Iran to have nuclear weapons, but I think that it's going to be even worse for America to get involved in another conflict that we can't end successfully.
Okay. All right. Well, you mentioned that it's I want to break down with you. You got some amazing new analysis out there of the states. A lot happening right now in the electoral landscape. We've got elections in Virginia and New Jersey this year, the midterms on the horizon, and then potentially 2028. You've got a great analysis of a lot of the key states, a lot of the registration. Before I get into that, though, I had Newt Gingrich on the show recently. I've talked to a lot of people who all sing your praises. I read your Substack, Captain K's Corner. You mentioned recently you were at the White House to brief them. Tell us a little bit about that meeting.
It was something I'm not really able to talk a whole lot about details with, but I have been able to share my research on election integrity since the 2020 election at a very high level with people who have a lot of influence to put forward points that are going to help us make actionable gains with cleaning up the election issues in this country, primarily related to transparency and ensuring that we have a federal system that is going to work. I believe that the administration wants to bring confidence in elections. To me, it's not so much about, for people that have been involved in election integrity, it's very personal, very direct about what we believe has happened in recent elections. But to the greater population, people are sick of having elections that go on for weeks after election day, elections that we can't trust, elections that are run under several different sets of rules. And I think that it's time for us to have a federal system of elections that is superior to states doing different things that, in my opinion, disenfranchise the intent of both the Electoral College and the distribution of the House of Representatives.
You've been a leader in this election integrity movement, and recently we rolled out Real ID in this country, and most people focus on what it was, the ability of, or the necessity to have it to get on a plane. But I also think it adds an element of voter integrity to the system. Do you agree with that?
I think so. I think that everyone having ID is a common sense solution. It has more than 70% support. Even look at the Wisconsin Supreme Court race a couple months ago. You had the big result where Democrats, of course, have figured out how to create a presidential turnout for off-year judicial races, but in the same ticket, you have a pretty big win for voter ID. Now, voter ID would go a long way in convincing people that the government wants to clear up the issues with elections, but I don't really think that that's the reason we have primary issues. I think it's the voter registration issues. And Director Patel yesterday declassified a report on Chinese influence in the 2020 election that has to do with fraudulent driver's licenses. Right before I came on with you, I published that article today. And that is how I believe that bad registrations are being created, in which mail-in ballots are then attached to registrations. And over a 5 to 7 week early voting period, those ballots go out in the mail and organized harvesting groups go out and pick them up. Pennsylvania, a key example.
I'll tell you what, if you send me the column that you wrote, I'll make sure we put it in the show notes, because I think that's important for people to see. So if you guys want to read it, obviously you can go to Seth's thing, but I'll also link to it in our show notes on the YouTube page and on Rumble, so that if people want to see that, they can click on it right away. Let's kind of move, if you can, to the two big states this year that are having elections. And I want to start with New Jersey. I believe that New Jersey is like Lucy with the football. Every year or a couple of years or so, Republicans get pulled into a senator or gubernatorial race under the belief that somehow they can pull this out. Your latest analysis has New Jersey's registration had gone from 13.5% favoring Democrats to now 12.6. Now, I'm no mathematician here, Seth, but that still seems like a healthy lead for the Democrats.
It is a big lead for the Democrats, but it's the trend is your friend kind of situation. And that's what I call it. Now, there's a lot of states you can look at them on the face. New Jersey votes to the right of its voter registration advantage. So the voter registration advantage is now 12.5. It was 13.5 in 2024, and Trump was within 6 points in New Jersey. Now, we also have other states like New Hampshire is one of the rare states that votes left of its voter registration advantage. New Hampshire is R+5, but it votes more like D+2 or D+3. Arizona, lately under Trump, has been left of the registration advantage because of that soft Republican population in Maricopa County. But Jersey, the trend is still going in the right direction. A lot of people don't realize this, but New Jersey is a very racially and ethnically diverse state. It's not just whites and blacks like you have in some of the industrial areas in the Northeast. You have a lot of Asian, you have a lot of Central Asian, like Indian. You have a lot of Southeast Asian. You have all types of voters, and Hispanic vote is pretty big there too, that all went hard to the right for Trump in 2024. And like Lucy with the football, like you said, there's a big issue with Republicans seeing Trump's results and thinking because they're Republicans, they're going to get the same. And that's where I think Trump probably has a boost over the standard Republican, but that trend is a positive sign. There are a lot of traditionally Republican areas in New Jersey, the working class areas, especially in the Southwest outside of Philadelphia, Gloucester County, a great example, hard right trends. But the party registration trend is most accurate of the shift in presidential politics. But it does help when you chip away the party membership at the state level. And in 2021, New Jersey almost had a Republican governor victory. It was very narrow. It was another situation in which mail-in ballots came in at the last minute and won a narrow result. But it's going to be tough because traditional political science suggests that the president's party usually takes it on the chin in special year elections and midterm elections. And it doesn't matter how good that president is.
Well, also, I mean, New Jersey is a very expensive state. See, it's wedged between the New York media market and the Philadelphia media market. I believe it's like the 10th largest state, and it doesn't have its own media market, which makes it expensive. So if you're Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican nominee for governor there, I don't know how you break through because you need a lot more money to communicate with the people of New Jersey, considering where the registration advantage that you just discussed that the Democrats have.
You do, and you also have to compete with the urban scape outside of New York City. You're talking about Essex County, you're talking about Newark. That's a big area in which Democrats have struggled in recent elections to get that same turnout which they've had in previous elections. It's also not as strong for their party as it used to be. So the key to making New York and New Jersey competitive is going to be chipping away Democrat margins in the massively populated urban counties. And that's really the case everywhere. And I think that a lot of Republican affiliates at the county level are hesitant to mix it up in the urban space, but that's where all the big margins are that have to be shifted. It's why Trump was within 13 points in New York, is because he did so much better in the 5 boroughs. So until the GOP gets confident going into the urban area and getting into the right set of policies, and like the Giuliani policies are the way to go. Clean up crime, fix all the issues, not so big on social issues, and you're going to have major headway. And that's one of the best parts about America First populism is it does do better in the urban areas.
All right. In my state here in Virginia, it's the opposite. So, right, New Jersey is all democratically controlled. The Republicans really want to try to take a shot at it. I think it's going to be very difficult. But in Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin swept into the State House with a full trio. So it's Youngkin, Winsome Sears, Lieutenant Governor, and Jason Miyares, the Attorney General. Democrats obviously making a huge run at Republicans this year, trying to take it back. Give me the lay of land of where you see Virginia right now.
So Virginia doesn't register voters by party, so I don't have a direct view county by county and independent city by city exactly how things are moving. However, we do have some comps on that. And before I move fully into Virginia, I want to let you know about New Jersey, that if this trend continues, if they continue to lose Democrat voting strength based on recent election trends, I think that if J.D. Vance is your nominee in 2028, that state is going to be within 3 points. And whether he wins it or not, it's going to force the Democrats to have to defend those 14 electoral electoral votes in New Jersey, which of course makes it more advantageous to be able to win Pennsylvania and other states. So this is a good sign. Now for Virginia.
By the way, that can't be overstated. I mean, can you imagine if New Jersey becomes competitive? You're absolutely 14 electoral votes that the Democrats never saw having to defend. That would be a seismic shift in how the presidential politics play out.
It would be like the Republicans having to suddenly go defend South Carolina in a presidential election. It really distracts you from being able to win North Carolina. So that's where things are going there. Now, as for Virginia, I think that Virginia is a very steep uphill climb for the Republican ticket this year, and I'll tell you why. Is President Trump's main agenda, well, some of his main agenda points domestically were to trim the fat in the federal government and to show the American people the fraud, waste, and abuse that happens with tax dollars and what's going on with these agencies. USAID, of course, is at the very center of that. Now, who works in these agencies and where do they live? They live in Northern Virginia. They live in Southern Maryland, right? So what you're going to have in a midterm or off-year dynamic, as is the case in Virginia this year, is you're going to have the Trump base. They'll vote in midterm or off-year numbers, which Wisconsin will give you the clue. Now, they may be somewhat motivated, but the people that are going to be really motivated to vote live in Loudoun County. They live in Alexandria. They live in Fairfax County, Falls Church, Prince William County. They're going to be all over the place voting like crazy, and they're going to skew left of where they were even in the 2024 election, which was Harris +6. So I think that Republicans running in Virginia this year have a really tough hand. And that's not a fault of President Trump. You know, his actions to trim the waste from the federal government benefit everyone else in the country, but they don't benefit the people downstream in what they call the rest of Virginia. So I'm not saying that you don't play the game, but I think it's a very steep challenge based on those margins they produce in the 10 cities and counties of Northern Virginia.
Yeah, it's funny. I mentioned this not too long ago, but every ad that the Dems are running is Trump and Elon Musk, Trump and Elon Musk. The question I have for you is more of a strategy question than a numbers question. But if you were advising any of the Republican candidates, Winsome Sears, John Reed, Jason Miyares, it's not like the Democrats are saying we have a different agenda. They're literally just running against Trump. So should Republicans embrace Trump or talk about a specific agenda with respect to how they'll run the Commonwealth better?
Yeah, I don't think at this point you definitely don't distance from Trump, because the rest of Virginia outside of Northern Virginia is very Trumpy. It's got parts of West Virginia type politics out in the West. You've got the Northeastern North Carolina vibes out in the Southeast. So you can't do that. You do have the reality of the angry voters in Northern Virginia. I think that you have to stick with your guns in a way, but the Democrats have given a lifeline to Republicans everywhere by their very open backing of these urban riots over illegal immigration. And John Fetterman is the only prominent Democrat I've seen that's willing to even open his mouth about the party refusing to back away from Mexican flag waving in our streets and assaulting the police who are trying to enforce the law over an issue that now I would bet 3 out of 5 Americans support deporting all illegal immigrants. It was 56% in the 2024 election.
I think you're right. It's getting worse. I think they jumped the shark on immigration. These guys siding with people waving Mexican flags, saying F ICE, isn't exactly patriotic. And I think the Democrats have continued to shed people who might have been traditional, like Kennedy type Democrats, who've said, you guys have gone too extreme.
Well, you're a couple street riots away in Northern Virginia from everything I just said about what I expect with the headwinds in Virginia this year being negated. So there's a reason you always stay in the game and you swing the bat, but they're going to have to figure out an agenda that incorporates the Democrat street violence with economic prosperity everywhere else to enhance turnout in the rest of Virginia. And it's going to be a tough climb, but it's all, comes down to candidate selection and candidate quality. I believe Abigail Spanberger is being set up to be the Democrat nominee. So she's a spook from the intelligence community that I think is, probably gonna maybe support lots of American involvement militarily, which may be unpopular. So there's a reason we got to let it play out, but the campaign's already moving. Yeah.
All right, let's move into the midterms for a second. I want to read you a statistic because I think part of this comes down to it's not just states, how they're moving, but specific gerrymandered districts. But since World War II, the party in power has lost an average of 25 seats in the midterms. The Cook Political Report rates 191 seats as safe, Republicans 11 as likely. 9 as Republican. That gets you a total of 211. If you were to carry all of that, that's still 7 short, and a couple short of what they have today. That leaves 19 toss-up states, which 10 are held by Democrats, 9 by Republicans. If Republicans hold all of their seats in that toss-up category, they must win 7 of them to reach the 218 magic number. Democrats will focus on the 3 Republican congressmen who won Kamala Harris district. So you got Don Bacon in Nebraska, Mike Lawler in New York, Brian Fitzpatrick. Those are the only ones that Harris actually won. But just over, like, if you had to just make a broad statement about what it looks like for Speaker Johnson to maintain the majority, is it favorable to him right now? Does he have work to do? Is this going to be a money situation? Like, what do you think the broad strokes look like?
I think that this week has been a very big positive for the likelihood of the GOP keeping the House majority. But things are very fragile on the world stage. You know, we got into Iran and Israel at the beginning of this talk. You should see Richard Barris's polling numbers on what Americans think about direct military involvement. So I think that depending on which way the administration goes could swing the way the midterm outlook looks. But the point is, it's a very narrow window as it was elected. Now it's different how they're sitting now based on member departures and deaths, but it was 220 to 215 Republican at the election. So that means that we can lose 2 seats from the Republican House and have 218, 217, but we lose 3, they take it. So I think that right now, based on the number one domestic goals, which include cleaning up the immigration problem, the illegal immigration problem, Trump just got a huge shot in the arm with the riots in the streets. And I also think that most people view him favorably as the way he's responded. You know, you got a lot of people on our side who want very aggressive enforcement, but you got the Pete Wilson issues from California in 1994. So I do think that it's very possible aggressive enforcement measures are coming, but I think that the left is also looking for a change in the narrative because they have an opportunity to get back in the game in the long run if they go back to their working man policies and try to, you know, regain their sentiments in the Rust Belt. But they're not choosing the slow and steady, hit the gym and watch your diet for a year path. They're choosing the roids, and they're trying to get in there. They're trying to get in there and get something on camera with babies getting tear gassed and whatnot to try to get the George Floyd effect against Republicans. So I think that it's a delicate situation. I think that you're right. It's very obvious to me, just like we have 56 different races in the Electoral College, you have safe blues and safe reds and everything in the middle. I think that you probably have 2/3 of the seats that are already decided. And then you have the ones that in a wave year could go flip on either way. I'm in a seat that is seen as somewhat vulnerable. That is in AZ6, Juan Ciscomani's district. And you know, he comes down here and visits the Republican Party in Pima County a lot. He's we've got a big Hispanic trend here where I think he's going to be fine. But those seats that you mentioned, Don Bacon's seat, especially in Nebraska, there's a lot of people that would not be sad to see Bacon go, but they'd be sad, you know, to see the Republican majority go. That district, by the way, is a couple thousand more strong in Republican registrations than it was in November of 2024, which also sets up nicely for 28.
Interesting. So Bacon probably, you got a guy like Mike Lawler in New York that, as we debate this reconciliation bill, has made the state and the local tax deduction a big issue that's commonly referred to in DC as SALT. The question I want to ask you is, with registration trends the way they are, et cetera, how big of a deal is an issue like that? Like Lawler's basically said, if I don't get what I want in SALT, I'll lose my seat. Do you think that's a compelling argument?
Yeah, I think that he's probably right about that because the fact that it doesn't mean that we should base policy on one seat, because one policy change might flip a blue seat to red. So as the whole goes, is where it's most important. But when you look at the midterm dynamics, it's 27 seats is the average loss since 1934 for the president's party. If Trump lost 27 seats in the House, then the Republicans would hold 193 seats a year and a half from now. And the Dems, of course, would have 242. It'd be a massive majority for them. So that is the standard. 20 out of 23 elections since 1934, the president's party lost seats. So we have a 1 in 8 window as it is, with no external variables going in. So right now, I think we do have that window open where we could be the 1 in 8 if we play the cards right, and if the circumstances on the world stage and the domestic stage play out like we need. But first off, it's identifying the seats that are the most vulnerable and doing it in a way that is pragmatic and real, not looking at antiquated polling methods, not looking at candidate fears. We got a lot of candidates that are in R plus 30 seats that do nothing but send out emails saying, if this doesn't happen, then I'm going to lose my seat. That's not the truth. So we need to find the seats that are truly vulnerable and figure out how to appeal to those voters. And then most importantly, it's delivering for the people, making sure that good legislation gets across. I think the one big beautiful bill does need to get across, even though it does have its issues that its critics have pointed out. But these critics don't consider the fact that for many decades now, we've been polluting the system in which we don't have a perfect bill because the system feeds itself and perpetuates itself in ways that aren't good for the people. But I think that one big beautiful bill accomplishes most of Trump's domestic agenda, which is what the people voted for and are therefore most likely to support renewing next year.
So in your estimation, I think like Mike Lawler, New York, as I mentioned, Brian Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania, maybe Tom Keene in New Jersey, David Valadao in California, Young Kim in California. Like I can only think of like 5 or 6 seats where you really have a tough slog.
You have a lot of those now, but the Democrats won almost all of the close races in California in 2024. There were 5 races, I believe, that were decided by less than 3,000 votes. And I wrote these up in one of my articles a few months ago. So we have opportunities for pickups in California, which unfortunately California is the Wild West when it comes to election integrity. And they will count votes until Christmas, and their candidates will straight up declare victory with a Santa Claus hat on shamelessly. But we have the coalition shift. We have the coalition shift in our favor. I'm telling you that working class Hispanics are going to continue to shift towards Republicans. Now, the midterm dynamics may blunt that a little bit, but all the stats that I've sent you with the voter registration stats suggest that the Hispanic voters are at worst for the Democrats going Republican, and at best for the Democrats leaving those ranks and becoming independents. And as Trump's economic plan sets in, as the Hispanic voter becomes wealthier, they shift to the right naturally, even before Trump became a political candidate.
So you put together this list of a bunch of states, Alaska, Arizona, California, and every one of them that you have in your chart, and I posted it on Substack, I'll continue to push it out there, shows a registration shift to the right. And when you look at all of the states that you did, and it includes like Rhode Island, where I grew up, Oregon, New Mexico, they all shift for a total of over 1 million votes to the right. Explain what you're getting at here and what the big picture takeaway is.
There are 30 states which register voters by party, Republican, Democrat, or any other state recognized parties. And you can go back on your YouTube channel, you can go through our shows from November where you and I went state by state. We got every single state right on the money. And yep. and I look back at the day of prediction threads. I was like, man, I need to frame that. I need to get that printed out. And that was good. So this is blocking and tackling X's and O's of election analysis that doesn't rely on polling. All right, so voter registration trend by party is the most accurate way to determine presidential margin shifts year by year. Now, presidential, that's where you have the most partisan turnout with the most equal likelihood of either side coming out, not midterm dynamics. And since the 2024 election, these 30 states that register by party, Connecticut hasn't updated, so I counted for 29 states in this. All 29 states are more Republican by party registration or less Democrat than they were in November of 2024. So 7 months later, all 29 states that have updated data have a larger Republican voter registration by number or smaller Democrat. And that is not a good sign for the Democrat Party, because normally by this point, the honeymoon period is over for the new president, and the party that's out of power is recruiting new members to go after the midterms and then potentially go after the president in 2028, 4 years later. And they're still lagging in numbers and they're losing their base. And this is why you have Democrat leadership turnover. This is why you have Fetterman saying the stuff that he's saying. And some of these states, the change has been very drastic. Sometimes to me, it represents cutting the fat out of what we know is already a bloated voter registration roll, especially automatic voter registration states. But Pennsylvania has already shifted more than 100,000 to the right since November of 24, when Trump won by almost 2 points. California is 100,000 or more to the right there's a few surprises in there. All the states in New England are leaning to the right. Rhode Island's is pretty sharp. Colorado was the only state that went to the left from 2020 to 2024, and that is 10,000 to the right of where it was in November of 2024. So even these states populated by environmental urban liberals are trending rightward as well. So you have a massive shift in all races and ethnicities to the right. And they're not just dropping out of the Dem ranks, they're joining the Republican ranks. Florida is now almost R plus 10, not even a conversation starter when it used to be a key swing state.
I'm looking at this Florida number, right? Trump 13.1 plus. And so at the end of 2024, Republicans had a 1,026,000 voter reg lead. It's now 1.265 million. So that's a gain in 6-7 months of 239,145 votes. That's your point. That's people proactively going out and saying, you know what, I've made a decision. I mean, you go look at your state of Arizona. It was the lead was 295,555 votes on election day of 2024. That's now 327,538 for a grand total shift of 31,983 new Republicans. And I think that's what my takeaway, Seth, is it's not just like people are throwing their hands up and saying, I don't like either party and Republicans kind of benefit. People are proactively going out and joining the Republican Party.
Miami-Dade County is at the center of this. This is and that to me is even greater than policy. It's a straight up attitude. We're tired of being told who to vote for. Miami-Dade County flipped to a Republican Party voter registration advantage in the last month and a half. It's now R plus 3%. And Miami-Dade County needs to be studied by the GOP to understand these dynamics because it's more diverse than people think. It's not just Cubans. There's a lot of Cubans, Venezuelans, Puerto Ricans, whites, Northeastern transplants. You have a really good model to go after other urban spaces and make other states more competitive. And when you put the Democrats on defense, that's what the beauty of the Trump revolution was, that Trump went after Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio. We don't even talk about Ohio anymore. Mitt Romney lost Ohio twice. He lost Iowa twice, right? Iowa now went to Trump by more than 13 points, and that's now R plus 11, more Republican than it was in November. Why do I care about Iowa? Because it has a direct traction to Wisconsin. It has a lesser traction to Minnesota. Same thing is true with Georgia. I can't track party registration numbers in Georgia, but I can track them in Duval County, Florida, which is several thousand more registrations redder than it was in November when Trump won it and won Georgia. So everything is lining up for greater things to come in 2028, which is depending largely on foreign and domestic policy right now in the White House, and for the best possible outcomes in 2026. But there's a lot of groundwork that has to be done, and it's candidate quality and then boots on the ground, door to door, and then doing everything we can to get election reforms passed in the critical states.
So when you look at this and these numbers, whether it's Florida, Arizona, what have you, are individuals going out to the extent you can track this and saying, I, Seth, I, Sean, want to go join this party and therefore I'm doing it? Or are outside groups registering them and helping this happen? Or is the party doing it, a combination of all of it? But what is the force behind it, if you will?
In some states, we have a push effect. Pennsylvania is a good example. Pennsylvania, in my monthly updates, I publish the party numbers every month for those 7 battleground states. And if they're not true battlegrounds like Iowa, they reflect a registration shift in a battleground state. Pennsylvania had municipal primaries in April and May. So what that meant was it was really heavy registration drives in the Southeast, where it's more Democrat leaning, Philadelphia, Montgomery, Delaware, Chester counties. So we got for 1 month only a slight move to the left just in the total number of registrations, because you have people that are going to be living under Democrat rule who go from independent to D so they can have a say in who they're voting for in the primaries, and every now and again soft Republican to D. But now that is over, Republicans are now pulling away 500 or more registrations a week back in the voter registration. So I think that by the time 2028 gets here, Pennsylvania will probably have an R plus registration edge, which is really impressive.
But is it people is it just happening, or are people like Scott Pressler and others or Turning Point responsible for it?
Well, you do have organizations that do voter registration drives. Pennsylvania's had a very strong Republican registration output since 2016. In 2012, Romney and Obama both had a race to the bottom. Both parties lost hundreds of thousands of registrations between '08 and 12. So Romney had a margin half as bad as McCain's, which suggests improvement, but he didn't gain much. It was Obama losing more than 300,000 votes, mostly out of Philadelphia and the urban areas. 2016, big registration gains for Trump. 2020, same. 2024. So yes, some of these groups and individuals that are out there registering voters are doing great work. Then you have the effect of local elections that cause people to shift registrations. And most importantly, you have the Democrats that are just hemorrhaging membership. And a lot of times this comes from voter registration maintenance in the automatic states. And then you have people, and you can see it in the party to party shift. In Pennsylvania, it's regularly a 2-to-1 advantage for Republicans for party switchers, Democrats becoming Republicans versus the other way around. And all throughout the interior, James Carville probably described Pennsylvania the best. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Alabama in between. So in that Alabama portion, you have just continuing Democrat losses where I'm looking at a county that's R plus 50. And I'm like, there's no way it's going to get higher than that. And then I look at it again, it's R plus 53. So it just seems to be going towards Texas Panhandle type margins.
So if we can make these numbers work to our advantage, then why do we lose a race like in Wisconsin for the Supreme Court?
Democrats have mastered ballot harvesting in the Midwest and the industrial Midwest. So in Wisconsin, Schimmel had more votes than Janet Protasiewicz did in 2023 when she won by 11 points. He had more votes than her, and he lost by 10 because Susan Crawford wound up with almost as many votes as Hillary Clinton in a presidential election 9 years ago. So what that means is you would expect a certain number of ballots. It was 600,000 ballots would win that race less than a decade ago, because you're not going to have big turnout for an off-year judicial election. Now, of course, there were tons of money, tons of influence that were put into these races. A lot of people afraid that Democrats taking over that court were going to redraw boundary lines and cost the Republicans 2 House seats, which I think was overstated. I'm not saying it's not going to cost anything, but right now, I don't know that they're going to actually get anything redrawn by 2026. But the Democrats are now able to produce a presidential turnout for a midterm. And this is done by expanding mail-in balloting, engaging activists to go collect ballots. Canvassers have done studies throughout Dane County, Madison, and found 23 people living or registered in a single apartment. These are not cleaned out. So in order to not offend the YouTube gods, there are a lot of things that have to be considered, but mail-in balloting and ballot harvesting favor urban areas, and urban areas are run overwhelmingly by Democrats. So unless we can start figuring out a way to produce a Trumpian type ballot count in off-year judicial elections, we're going to have to press for more election reforms.
Okay. You mentioned a moment ago, New Jersey, you were talking about J.D. Vance. And I know that's a way off because we got to get through the midterms. We got to get through this. Well, we got to get through New Jersey and Virginia, then the midterms. I obviously, regardless of whether it's J.D. Vance or anyone else, it seems to me, based on what you're saying and what the data shows, that Republicans are going to go into the next presidential election with a greater advantage than President Trump had going into the 2024 elections. Fair?
Very fair. Of the 312 electoral votes that Trump won, party registration figures suggest J.D. Vance would carry all 312 electoral votes that Trump just won today in an election held today. Now, I think that there are 4 states that will be within 3% for Vance and winnable. Okay. New Jersey, New Hampshire, Minnesota, and New Mexico.
And by the way, so every one of those we haven't won in quite some time. So those would all be additions.
Correct. So New Hampshire is 4 electoral votes. New Jersey's 14, so that's 18. New Mexico is 5 more, 23, and Minnesota is 10 more, and that's 33. So add that to Trump, you've got 345, and give him Nebraska 2, that's 346. So there's a possibility that Vance's electoral vote total is approaching the mid 300s. Now, there's a long way to go between here and there, but those numbers suggest that all 312 votes that Trump just won would stay in Republican hands if there were a presidential election held today. Now, it's also critical to express that is a Republican that has most of Trump's body of policy behind him. I don't think that the standard Romney class Republican would go in and win Pennsylvania today.
I don't think there's anybody on the horizon that fits that bill, though. Do you? I mean, to me, this is J.D. Vance, maybe Marco Rubio. I mean, to me, I think this is right now. Here we are, ways out, but I do think this is Vance's to lose. But anybody else, I agree with you. I mean, I don't even know that there's somebody that would fit that bill.
So to me, I went through everybody's opinions about J.D. Vance a year ago when he was being selected as vice president. And I don't have issues with his past positions on President Trump where he was very critical of President Trump. If you can't change your mind, then there's really not much of a point. I mean, Trump has 77 million voters. He had 63 million 8 years ago. So he's clearly changed a lot of minds. That's okay to allow people to change their minds. It's what they do with it. I think that Vance has exceeded the expectations of most people on the right. And if you were to have anybody else in the conversation for nominee in 2028, it would tell me that something went wrong here in these 4 years. So that there would be a market for someone else because he is the most attached to the Trumpian revolution of any of the possible candidates.
Agree. Seth Keshel, always love our conversations. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your data, breaking it down, and frankly, in a week like this, giving us some optimism as far as where we're headed. Thank you so much again. Always look forward to it. Go to Captain K's Corner on Substack to get it all. We'll put all this in the show notes so you can get his charts and his latest updates as well. Thank you guys for being with us. We got a huge week ahead. I don't want to get too far into it, but just to say tomorrow is going to be a very special episode. That's all I can say right now, but it's going to be worth checking out. You can always find out more if you go to SeanSpicer.com and sign up. I know if you forgot Father's Day, it's always a great gift to give. We've got a great panel coming your way on Thursday. And then Friday, Trump's former national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, is going to be here to break down the latest in the foreign policy world, of which there is a ton. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.